Greetings, everyone. My name is Professor Chan, and I am delighted to welcome you to Spring Hebrew online. Welcome to the class. This is the first video in a series of videos that you'll be watching throughout the semester. This first video is meant to simply ask the question, why learn Hebrew at all? And let me just lay my motivations out on the table and say, the purpose of this is to give you a sense of optimism and about the coming semester, and a sense of why I think it's important that we actually engage biblical languages, the original biblical languages. Of course, we have access to so many translations right now, especially in English, the NRSV, the NIV, the Tanakh translation, all fantastic translations. But I'm hoping to show you in this video and also throughout the semester that engaging the original languages can really unlock some things for us that will be helpful in our future ministries. So let's jump right in. Let me open up this Prezi presentation and we'll begin. Okay, so question number one, why learn Hebrew at all? Is this just a hoop that you have to jump through? Well, on one level, that's actually true, right? Some of you do need to, most of you probably do have to actually do this as a graduation requirement. So we have to acknowledge that in most cases, you're probably here to jump through the hoop. But I want to say it's going to be much more than that. And what I'm hoping you're going to get out of this semester is this deep sense that, you know what? Engaging the original language is really worth it. It's not just a hoop I have to go through, it's a crucial skill that's going to help me in biblical interpretation. So here's the first one. Why study Hebrew at all? First is this. Every translation you pick up, NRSV, NIV, King James Version, it doesn't matter what it is. Every translation is an interpretation. Now I'm sure you've heard that before. It's kind of a common phrase that gets thrown around in theological education. But in languages, we learn that when we're studying biblical languages, we learn that this is really true. Look, here's an analogy to explain it. Why I think it's best to try and learn something about the original languages. Reading a biblical text in English, whatever version, is like dating someone on Skype. Okay? Think about this. The medium, Skype or the video camera, whatever it is, really, it's great because it enables you to connect with somebody in a sort of live and dynamic way from anywhere in the world. My wife and I lived in Helsinki, Finland all last year, and it was the primary way that we stayed in contact with my family in the United States, with our families in the United States. So it's great. But there's nothing like seeing the person you care about face to face, being able to hug the person, being able to shake hands, being able to just do sort of the daily things in life. And so reading a biblical text in translation, fantastic, and it's so good that we have those, but it's really like dating somebody only through Skype. It's just not the same. And so what learning the original languages allows us to do is to get to know the Bible sort of in a more in an up close way, in a way that is that a translation won't allow us to. So that's because every translation is an interpretation, and whenever you have two languages, an original language and a target language, so Hebrew and English, there are never one-to-one correspondences. Right? There's so much cultural difference and chronological distance, in fact, between the time when the Bible was written and our own time, that there simply cannot be one-to-one correspondence. And so every time we translate a word, we're making a big leap. And so because of this, learning Hebrew can also help us appreciate that distance and appreciate that interpretive step that was actually made, so that when we get up on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night church service or Saturday, and we preach or give a Bible study, we'll have an appreciation for the fact that the original languages may not be fully reflected in our translation. So that's it. Translation is interpretation. Next point, lost in translation. There's something always gets lost in translation, and this is related to the first point. And I'm going to show you this little clip from Star Trek. I found that all good things that all things that are good that need to be said are probably been said in Star Trek, so we might as well use this as an example. and I think you'll understand why.
I offer a toast. The undiscovered country. The future.
Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1.
You have not experienced Shakespeare until you have read him in the original Klingon.
Okay, that's a funny little moment from Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And I like it for our purposes here because it illustrates, of course, Shakespeare is not written in Klingon, but what it illustrates is the importance of language and the importance of original languages, in fact, and that you can't really get at a text and get to know its heart and soul until you know it in its original language. So stuff gets lost in translation that can in fact only be recovered when one is able to dig a bit into the original texts. Let's look at the next point. Language is more than meaning. What exactly do I mean by this? Well, I'm going to have to show you some examples here. So I need to close out Prezi and open up BibleWorks. Just a moment. And we're going to look at two texts. One is Genesis 2:7. And actually, I think we'll just stick with one text. We'll look at Genesis 2:7. And so here, while that's loading, let me say this. This is what I mean by language is more than meaning. You know, one of the things that Hebrew literature loves to do is it loves to play with words, and especially to play with word sounds. And that's why I say that language is more than meaning, right? Language also involves the creation of rhyme, which often cannot be translated, and which often does not translate into the target language that the translator is looking for. So let's look at Genesis 2:7 as just one example, and I choose this one because it's one that I think most of you will be familiar with. Okay, let's go here to the Hebrew text. Okay, let's look at the English translation. We'll look at the Tanakh translation. This is from the Jewish Publication Society. Genesis 2:7. The Lord God formed man from the dust of the earth. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Okay, so that's a fine translation, and it gets all the concepts across. What this translation misses, though, is the word play between the word Adam, translated here as man in the Tanakh. It could also be a human or a human being. And the word Adamah, or here, min ha-adamah, highlighting it right here. So let me translate it in a way that that kind of reflects this wordplay. So we might say, and Yahweh, God, Yahweh Elohim formed, or he fashioned as a potter would fashion something, et ha'adam, so the man. He formed the man, the Adam, afar min ha'adamah. So from the dust of the Adamah, okay? So there's a word play happening, and then Adamah is the word reflected here, earth. Okay, so there is a word play between Adam and Adamah that is very difficult to replicate in English. One person I've read, Ellen Davis, I think she's at Duke, and I think she translates this as Yahweh Elohim created the human from the humus, from the humus, I should say, from the humus, and so she tries to reflect this wordplay, but this kind of thing happens in Hebrew all over the place, and I could give you any number of examples, both in narrative and in poetry. This stuff usually gets lost, and it's part of the narrative art of poetry, and it's something that we can, if we're sensitive and aware of the original languages, we can actually point those out to people, and sometimes it is a really profound meaning. In this case, we might reflect on the text and say, you know, the wordplay actually shows the deep connection between the man or the human and the earth from which he came. And so there's a deep fundamental connection between humanity and between the earth. And that's significant, I think. Let's go back to the Prezi. So that is, language is more than meaning. Oftentimes, Hebrew poets and writers will want to play off of sounds, and so that sometimes those sounds can't be communicated into the target language. Whoops. Okay. Now, the Bible did not arrive; it arose. What exactly do I mean by that? Sometimes the Bible. Sometimes we think about the Bible as this book that kind of arrived from heaven, maybe on the wings of some heavenly parcel carrier, and was just kind of dropped here on earth for us to discover. But that's actually not what happened. The Hebrew Bible is the result of a very long process. That involved many innumerable scribes, or at least we don't know how many scribes were involved in this, but many for sure, over a very long period of time, and primarily in Israel, though some of them may have been written outside of Israel, maybe in Mesopotamia. But all of that to say, learning Hebrew helps us to recognize that when we enter the Bible, the moment we here, let me grab my Bible. The moment we open these pages and begin to read this, we are in fact engaging in a cross-cultural activity. Okay, and in many ways, the Bible is quite familiar to us because we hear it quoted in politics, or we hear it quoted every Sunday if we're part of a faith community. And when it is so familiar to us, we can often forget that we are reading ancient texts from a very different culture. These texts did not arrive from heaven, sort of hermetically sealed from history. They arose within culture, and by learning the original languages, we can appreciate more the alien nature of the Bible, and it can help us to think about the Bible as a document that's quite distant from us, and that can actually be quite helpful, because sometimes the Bible becomes almost too familiar, and we forget that it is filled with cultural assumptions that are not our own. And the original language, learning Hebrew, can actually help us to understand that a little bit more, to understand the complex and remarkable and fascinating world that the Hebrew Bible was written in. So that's the end of this video. All of this is the pep talk, my attempt to get you excited about learning Hebrew, and it's going to be challenging, okay? There's no doubt about that. But I'm going to do my best, and our TA is going to do his best to make sure that this is as painless a process as possible, and also that you're enjoying it, and that you're seeing really how much these original language skills can help you in ministry. This concludes the first video. I look forward to seeing you in our live conversations in the initial weeks of our class, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you very much for watching.